What if Earth had Saturn's rings? Let's imagine you wake up one morning, open your curtains, and there it is. A massive arc stretching across the sky. Not a rainbow, not the Milky Way. Rings, planetary rings, just like Saturn's. Spanning from horizon to horizon, a delicate structure of icy debris floating in orbit above Earth. Beautiful and terrifying. Let's say that, for whatever reason, Earth suddenly has a set of rings similar to Saturn's. Same mass, same width, same general composition. Mostly ice, some dust, and maybe the occasional moonlet or chunk of rock. What would that look like from the surface? How would that change life on Earth? First, the visuals. Earth rings would be far closer than the Moon, only a few thousand kilometers up. From many latitudes, they'd dominate the sky. Near the equator, they'd form a bright, razor-thin line stretching across the sky directly overhead, like some cosmic belt. Farther north or south, they'd curve into grand arches, visible both day and night, reflecting sunlight by day and moonlight or city lights by night. Cities near the poles might see them only as a glow on the horizon, like permanent aurora. But that beauty comes with a cost. Rings like Saturn's wouldn't just float there harmlessly. Earth's gravity, the atmosphere, and solar radiation would all interact with them in complex and sometimes dangerous ways. For one, the rings would cast shadows, huge ones. Imagine permanent partial shade across entire continents. Depending on their angle, the rings could drastically affect climate. Some regions might receive less sunlight, triggering cooler temperatures, altered weather patterns, or even localized mini ice ages. On the flip side, the constant reflection of sunlight by the rings could cause strange optical phenomena, massive halos, shimmering false suns, and dramatic temperature gradients. But shadows are the least of our problems. Rings can't exist too close to a planet without falling apart. They need to stay beyond the Roche limit, the point where gravitational forces tear apart larger objects. Saturn's rings are inside its Roche limit, which is why they're made of debris instead of moons. Earth's Roche limit is much closer than the Moon, so these rings would have to hover somewhere in low Earth orbit, probably between 2,000 and 8,000 kilometers up. That's prime real estate for satellites. In fact, if we had rings, we probably never would have launched satellites in the first place. The dense bands of ice and rock would shred anything that tried to pass through. GPS, communications, weather satellites, all either destroyed or grounded forever. The entire space industry as we know it wouldn't exist. Forget Starlink, forget the ISS, even launching rockets would become a lot harder. Any vertical trajectory would risk smashing through billions of high-speed particles moving at several kilometers per second. Even a pebble at that speed could vaporize a rocket. And then there's the matter of the Moon. If Earth had rings, it probably couldn't also have the Moon. The Moon's gravity would destabilize the rings over time, either pulling them into clumps or scattering them entirely. Conversely, the rings could slowly drain angular momentum from the Moon's orbit, pulling it in. That could lead to a dramatic ending, the Moon gradually spiraling inward, passing through the Roche limit and breaking apart, adding to the rings in one final catastrophic event. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that somehow the rings and the Moon coexist. Maybe they're in just the right configuration, like Saturn and its many moons. What then? Well, humans being humans, we'd almost certainly try to mine the rings. There's water ice up there, and lots of it. Space agencies and corporations would send up robotic drones to collect it, maybe using tethers or electromagnetic catapults. We'd use it for fuel, drinking water, even construction material. The rings might become the solar system's most accessible ice mine. Or we'd ruin them. We'd commercialize the view. Luxury hotels with ring view penthouses, billionaires paying for ring diving expeditions, cities competing for tourism dollars based on who has the best view of the rings during equinox. Conspiracy theories would explode. The rings aren't real. NASA faked the ring shadow. It's a government weather machine. But sooner or later, nature would step in. Earth's atmosphere stretches into low Earth orbit, and even though it's extremely thin up there, it's not nothing. Over time, millions of years, the friction from atmospheric particles would cause the rings to decay. Gradually, they'd fall to Earth. Most of the material would burn up in the atmosphere, creating decades or even centuries of incredible meteor showers. But some of the larger pieces might survive, peppering the surface with icy impacts. And the slow death of the rings would change the climate again, warming the places that had lived under their shadows, disrupting ecosystems that had evolved under the ring sky. So, what if Earth had Saturn's rings? We'd get a more beautiful sky, that's for sure. Stunning sunsets, permanent crescents of light, a sky that reminds us every day that we live on a planet spinning in space. But we'd pay the price, with lost satellites, lost climate stability, and eventually lost rings. Still, for however long they lasted, it would be magnificent. Subscribe to learn a lot of interesting things.